Egypt rejects reported Israeli plans to displace Palestinians, warns of historical injustice. Nationwide protests and general strikes sweep Israel as pressure mounts to end Gaza war. Zelensky and European leaders to meet Trump in Washington as Ukraine seeks security guarantees. Thank you so much for joining us. We move now to live press conference between Ukraine's Zelensky and European Union's von der Leyen.
Важлива розмова з президентом Трампом. Скажіть, чи озвучив він бачення Росії щодо гарантій безпеки для України, які прийнятні для Росії, так? І які гарантії безпеки, власне, прийнятні для України? Чи досі ми говоримо про troops on the ground, тобто певні, чи це 5 стаття, якщо можете пояснити ваше бачення, як це може виглядати? І коротке просто, як у вас настрій, чи нема перестроги, що в Білому домі може все піти так само, як було 28 лютого? Дякую. I'm sorry, if I may also to the Madam President, another question.
I think we're good with one because we have a call soon.
We're Дякую. Can I answer Ukrainian? Yep. Дякую. Дякую за запитання. Передусім, я не знаю, про що реально говорили Путін і президент Трамп. І я хочу, щоб багато деталей президент Трамп сказав мені, потім європейським лідерам. І те, що президент Трамп сказав сигнал про гарантії безпеки, для мене це набагато важливіше, ніж думки Путіна. Тому що Путін нам не дасть ніяких гарантій безпеки. Гарантії безпеки – це сильна армія. Це може дати тільки Україна. Фінансування цієї армії це може дати тільки, я вважаю, Європа.
And wouldn't be achieved without any security guarantee. So the most importantly, that the Ukrainian army, that Ukraine is the only one to accept such guarantees supported and endorsed by Europe. So the internal front in Ukraine is facing great shortages that should be only secured by the security guarantees through the United States. Too many several air and land defense should be provided. And to answer your question, such should be the security guarantees from the Russian side and their signals that they're not going to occupy more than that. And would be enough currently. And the periodical meetings are in place. And I trust the White House, that will be, the White House meetings will be more productive. I apologize for all of you that we should leave now. Thank you very much and see you later.
Egypt expressed deep concern over recent reports suggesting that Israel has held consultations with some countries to accept the displacement of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to their territories. In a statement issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Egypt noted that its contacts with countries allegedly open to hosting Palestinians confirmed that they do not accept such objectionable plans. Egypt reiterated its unequivocal rejection of any Israeli plans to displace the Palestinian people from their historic land, whether in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank, under any pretext, justification, or terminology, whether the displacement is forced or voluntary through policies of starvation, land confiscation, settlement expansion, and making life unlivable on Palestinian land. Egypt also stressed that it will not accept or participate in such displacement, describing it as a historical injustice with no moral or legal justification, and warning that it would inevitably lead to the liquidation of the Palestinian cause. Several Israeli cities witnessed large protests and a general strike in response to a call organized by the Forum of Families of Israeli Prisoners held in the Gaza Strip in central Tel Aviv, which has been nicknamed the Hostages Square and become a symbol of the protests. Demonstrators held up pictures of the detainees and blocked major roads leading into the city, including the main route between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. As part of a form of protest that began the night before, protesters set tires on fire, causing severe traffic jams, according to the Israeli media reports. Reports also indicate that the protest spread to more than 350 locations across the country, including Jerusalem, where participants chanted for an agreement to return the hostages and end the war. The Hamas movement stated that Israel's plans to forcibly displace Palestinians to the south of the Gaza Strip constitute a new wave of brutal genocide and criminal displacement. The movement added that Israel's introduction of tents into southern Gaza under the pretext of humanitarian arrangements is a blatant act of deception. Hamas pointed out that Netanyahu and his government attempts to displace the Palestinian people and uproot them from their land clearly reveal their true intentions of establishing what is referred to as Greater Israel. The Palestinian Ministry of Health announced the death toll from the Israeli assault since October 7, 2023, has risen to 61,944 martyrs, with 155,886 injured. The ministry reported that Gaza hospitals received 47 martyrs and 226 wounded in the past 24 hours alone. It also noted that since March 18, 2025, the date when the genocide war resumed, the toll has reached 10,400 martyrs and 43,845 injuries. The Israeli army released 6 Palestinian detainees on Sunday who had been arrested from the Gaza Strip during the ongoing ground operations that began on October 27, 2023. They were reportedly held under harsh conditions. Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza Strip confirmed the arrival of the 6 released detainees after the Israeli army released them through the Kisufim crossing in the southeast of the central governorate. In press statements upon their arrival at the hospital, the released detainees said that they had endured extremely harsh and inhumane detention conditions and were subjected to Israeli torture. The UNRWA agency stated that the Israeli-American aid system in the Gaza Strip strips away humanity and brings chaos and death. Julia Tuma, UNRWA's communications and media director, emphasized that the Israeli-American aid system in Gaza is dehumanizing and causing disorder and fatalities. She stressed the urgent need to return to a unified system for coordinating and distributing humanitarian aid in Gaza, led by the United Nations and based on international humanitarian law, warning that they are on the verge of losing collective humanity.
More than 1,000 starving people have been reported.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that Hamas wants Israeli forces to withdraw from the Gaza Strip and the buffer zone, which would allow it to regroup. The Israeli Prime Minister added that the continued security control of his forces over the Gaza Strip is one of the conditions for ending the war. The Uruguayan government has suspended the cooperation agreement between the National Research and Innovation Agency, ANII, and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in response to the Israeli army's planned attacks in the Gaza Strip and its decision to occupy Gaza City. At the governmental level, Foreign Minister Mario Luptekin announced that the decision was made as an official response to the newly planned Israeli operations in Gaza City and the entire Gaza Strip. The decision comes just weeks after the agreement between ANII and the Hebrew University was announced. The agreement was expected to lead to the opening of ANII offices in Jerusalem and was anticipated to strengthen ties between Uruguay and Israel. Gaza is now in the grip of famine, with international monitors confirming mass hunger, acute malnutrition, and a rising death toll as Israeli restrictions block critical aid.
The Gaza Strip is facing one of the gravest hunger crises in recent history. International food security monitors confirm that 2 of the 3 criteria used to declare famine have already been reached: widespread lack of food and soaring levels of malnutrition. The final measure, death rates, is expected to be confirmed soon. Over 500,000 people are now surviving in a famine-like conditions. Families often go entire days without eating, while children under 5 are at particular risk, with more than 320,000 facing acute malnutrition. Health facilities that remain open are overwhelmed, unable to meet the rising demand for treatment and nutrition support. The crisis is compounded by restrictions on humanitarian access. More than 108 organizations say Israel is blocking the entry of critical supplies, leaving warehouses in Egypt and Jordan filled with food, medicine, and water that cannot reach those in need. Groups including Oxfam and Doctors Without Borders warn that millions of dollars worth of life-saving aid has been stranded for months. Israel denies responsibility for the hunger crisis, accusing Hamas of diverting aid, an allegation Hamas rejects. Meanwhile, aid groups point to new Israeli registration rules that require full staff lists, donor details, and other sensitive data as conditions for approval. They argue these measures violate international law, endanger personnel, and have become a tool to silence independent humanitarian action. At the same time, a militarized food distribution system backed by the U.S. and Israel has come under sharp criticism. Aid agencies say it has turned food access into a deadly battleground, with hundreds killed at distribution points since the scheme began. As the war enters its 23rd month, the death toll from starvation continues to rise. Gaza's health ministry says at least 239 people, including over 100 children, have already died of hunger and malnutrition. With borders sealed, supplies blocked, and communities pushed deeper into desperation, humanitarian groups warn that famine in Gaza is no longer a looming threat. It is already here.
For more analysis, we now move to Salma Al-Fiqi in our newsroom. To you, Salma.
Thank you, Hela. And for further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by the managing editor of Al Ahram, Mr. Mohammed Izzeddin. Welcome, sir, to Qnews. Sir, how do you view Netanyahu's statements yesterday expressing his desire to maintain security control over the Gaza Strip?
Thanks for having me. Absolutely. Netanyahu's statements are provocative, do not consider the reality, ignoring conditions, only targeted to maintain the current situation as the war is only path, and along with aligning with the far-right coalition to survive his political life, and also ignoring to release the hostages or to strike a just deal for a ceasefire and delivering the humanitarian aid without any hindrance as happening now. Certainly this matter through which Netanyahu pursues a strategy to develop the war and to have a full control of Gaza Strip following the transiting of the Strip during the past few weeks, using as he claims, distributing the humanitarian aid through the Gaza Foundation or the Humanitarian Gaza Foundation, and killing those who are seeking food and deporting them. Targeting defenseless civilians are seeking the humanitarian aid, in addition to provide more constraints of the distribution, is a genocide. And what he also pursues, the establishment of new settlement along with the controlling Gaza, is a great breach of the international law along with the international conventions being signed.
Mr. Mohammed, how do you see the impact of the protests in Israel on the decision to end the war in Gaza? What do you think?
Absolutely, the answer is through the TV screens today. There are around 1 million demonstrators nationwide or throughout the occupied territories, and they all request the release of the hostages. And most importantly, by saying one of the protesters that as Netanyahu is the angel of war, such a description is expressing the status of the public in Israel and the brutality used by the far-right coalition headed by Netanyahu to complete the war and to execute a bigger schemes that was laid down for many years to have a full control of Gaza Strip and to be occupied militarily. In addition, eliminate or whatever is taken over by the occupied forces in the Gaza Strip, along with the West Bank, and to trisecting them in a breach of the international conventions and norms, as it is the case, as Israel is always doing so.
Sir, do you think the general strike in Israel maybe could pressure Netanyahu to halt the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip?
Certainly, a strike that took place since 8 o'clock in the morning and 10,000 joined by institutions and commercials, markets, and in addition to an authority of the captives family, along with the left parties, and some of the nationals are living in the occupied territories by sending a message to the international parties such as the EU and the countries of the world that the Israeli peoples are completely isolated or distanced from the Israeli government and do not wish to prolong the war and to stop the killing of the Israeli soldiers as announced the killing of 4 Israeli by killing the Palestinian people. Other with disregard of what is concealed by the Israeli media to the process of genocide process inside Gaza. So the pressure isn't only internationally but within Israel due to the Israeli policy supported by the far-right ministers, and in a bid to change his image, to manipulate or to transfer himself from a political leader into a spiritual leader, only targeting to keep him in power without or without giving any consideration to any other considerations, such as the families of the captives already been there in Gaza.
Do you think, sir, has Israel actually begun implementing its plan to displace the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip? Has it actually started doing that?
In fact, Israel has already started doing so since the announcement of the full-scale military operation without announcing some other operations. And the fact is dividing the Palestinian territories and sending evacuation orders randomly, in addition to bombardment areas that never been warned before in Khan Yunis, for example, in addition to complete the Chariot Ganot schemes and Israeli generals and the attempt of militarily pressuring strongly to trisecting the Gaza Strip and to seize new areas that were supposedly the military operation should be started, but wasn't announced due to the general strike.
Do you think there's another one that's coming up that's going to be announced within a few hours, as you were just mentioning, sir?
Everything is possible. Treasury and the main nature of the Israeli army, and it is possible to be announced within the upcoming hours to start the full scale of the military operation. And of course, its main goal is to displace the people and to push forward for the scheme of the forced
unfortunately, because we are running out of time, and that was from Cairo, the managing editor of Al-Ahram, Mr. Mohammed Izzeddin. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on Q News. And now we go back to Hala Al-Hamalawi in our studio. Hala.
Thank you so much, Salma. We move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanese President Joseph Aoun affirmed that Lebanon has delivered a clear message to Iran, stressing the need to respect its sovereignty and refrain from interfering in its internal affairs. He explained that he emphasized this point during his meeting with the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, stressing that relations must be built on the basis of mutual respect. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu affirmed that the operations carried out by the Israeli army along the Lebanese border fall under legitimate self-defense, according to him, and are in line with the ceasefire agreement with Lebanon. Netanyahu stressed that Tel Aviv remains committed to the ceasefire as long as the other side upholds it, accusing Hezbollah of trying to exploit regional tensions to bolster its military arsenal. S&P Global Ratings has upgraded Lebanon's long-term local currency sovereign credit rating from CC to CCC and revised the outlook from negative to stable. The decision followed the agency's assessment conducted during the last week of July, which included meetings with Lebanese authorities, particularly the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of Lebanon. The Associated Press reported that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio signed a plan early last week that would reduce the UNIFIL forces and end their presence within the next 6 months. The UN Security Council is expected to renew UNIFIL's mandate by the end of August. As in previous years, this year's renewal is generating significant controversy. European leaders, including from Germany, France and Britain, will accompany Volodymyr Zelensky to meet Donald Trump in Washington. Ahead of the Washington talks on Monday, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer were hosting a meeting of allies to shore up Zelensky's position, hoping in particular to lock down robust security guarantees for Ukraine that would include a U.S. role. According to sources, the U.S. and Russian leaders discussed proposals for Russia to relinquish tiny pockets of occupied Ukraine in exchange for Ukraine ceding a swathe of fortified land in the east and freezing the front lines elsewhere. Russian President Vladimir Putin held a phone call with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko to discuss the ongoing talks in Alaska. The service of the Belarusian president said that the two presidents discussed the situation in the region in the light of the talks in Alaska. Putin informed his Belarusian counterpart in detail about the results of the last Russia-US summit. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said in a post on X that she will be meeting U.S. President Donald Trump along with other European leaders in the White House on Monday. She also welcomed Zelensky in Brussels. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held phone calls with his Turkish and Hungarian counterparts just hours after a summit between the Russian and U.S. presidents ended without any agreement on ending the war in Ukraine. According to Russian Foreign Ministry, the calls included an exchange of views on the outcomes of the high-level Russian-American meeting held in Alaska on August 15. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we have been covering. Egypt rejects reported Israeli plans to displace Palestinians and warns of historical injustice. Nationwide protests and general strikes sweep Israel as pressure mounts to end Gaza war. Zelensky and European leaders to meet Trump in Washington as Ukraine seeks security guarantees. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi. I thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.